Objection, someone whispered. But the courtroom had already stopped breathing. I limped in on crutches, head high, pain burning steady. My father stood, face drained. Oh my God, it's her. Hi, I'm Grace Harper, 28, software engineer from Denver. They thought I'd stay in a coma and disappear. They thought my $10 million deal would vanish with me. It didn't, and neither did I. The woman beside me made my father flinch like a confession. Months earlier, I'd walked out of a glass tower. Contract signed, hands shaking, future blazing. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, would you make them pay or forgive? The elevator mirrored my grin that day. 10 million, my algorithm, my name. I rehearsed how I'd tell them. How Dad might finally look proud. I opened the door, contract in hand. My sister didn't smile. She sharpened. Your algorithm? She said, voice coiled tight. The one I've been overseeing? Her chair scraped the tile like fury. She stepped close, breath ice cold. You think you're better than me? I swallowed. It's not a competition. By the stairs, her eyes glittered. You're nothing without me, she hissed. The shove stole the floor away. Air, wood, pain, then blackness. Machines were talking when I woke. A ceiling I didn't recognize blinked. 2 weeks, the nurse whispered gently. Coma, you're safe now. Did my family come? I asked. Silence pressed against the room. They called once, she admitted softly. They said you brought this on yourself. The words split me open quietly. Quieter than the fall, somehow deeper. My legs screamed with every breath. My heart screamed louder, unheard. Days smeared into antiseptic light. No flowers, no footsteps, no mother. I stared at the door anyway. It stared back, perfectly closed. Then my sister appeared. Perfume first. Arms folded like a verdict. Still clinging to life? She smiled. You're holding everyone back. Why are you here? I asked. To make sure you stay out. She left a chill on the sheets. And something mean in the air. My best friend slipped in later. Her hug saved my lungs. They're parading your contract at work, she said, eyes burning. She's calling it hers now. The room tilted, steady and cruel. I opened my banking app, trembling. Red alert. Account frozen, court order. Incompetent to manage funds, the banker said. I stared at my living hands. A lawyer arrived with paperwork. My signature, forged into surrender. Transfer of control, the stamp read. To her. Always to her. Then Dr. Price pulled my chart. Entries I didn't own bled. Extended sedation. Neurological decline. A script for my erasure. Someone altered your records, she said. This wasn't a mistake. I remembered childhood like a clue. Praise redirected, blame stapled on me. She took dolls, rooms, stories, credit. Now she wanted my future. Grief hardened into something steadier. Not rage. Proof with a pulse. Help me document everything, I said. Every change, every lie, every hand. They nodded like anchors in stormlight. At last, I wasn't alone. The day I stopped asking why, I started planning how. Recovery taught me to move quietly. Say less, write everything, save proof. Daniel, my lawyer, brought order. Timeline first, he said. Who touched what and when? Dr. Price printed my chart. She circled lies in red ink. Extended sedation, not true. Neurological decline, false. Her eyes steadied mine. Someone wrote this expecting silence. My best friend gathered emails. Replacing Grace effective immediately. Vision deck, Monica as lead. Each line burned like acid. Daniel slid over a recorder. Colorado's one-party consent, he said. If she talks, we use it. I texted my sister. Coffee, 10 a.m. She agreed with a smirk emoji. Meanwhile, Kara, the investigator, followed money. She laid out transfers on the table. 10,000 here, 8 there. All to Mark, my colleague. He's forging records, she said. Confidence always costs cash. That night, I practiced aloud. Keep voice neutral. Let her brag. Predators talk to fill the silence. I stood before the mirror, repeating questions under my breath. How'd you move it through legal? Who helped you push it forward? I forced a steady smile each time. Denver was gray the next morning. I limped to the cafe early, recorder heavy in my pocket. She arrived late, sunglasses indoors. Her laugh carried before she sat. Look at you upright, she sneered. Miracles happen. I asked about work casually. Her grin widened. Contracts moving forward. Someone had to step up. Legal was fast, I replied. She leaned back, satisfied. I had help, she admitted. Mark's cooperative, worth every penny. I studied her carefully. The tilt of her chin. The ease of a thief rehearse. Recorder captured every detail. Finally, I pressed. Nice having my deal under your name. Her lips curled without shame. You weren't going to use it. Everybody knows you're not stable. The word stable hit like a gavel. Then she added, almost bored. Medical said you might not wake. Dad agreed we had to move. Dad agreed. Not a surprise, only confirmation. When she left, the chair sighed. I sat still, steadying my pulse. Outside, Kara texted another photo. Deposits, dates, Mark's signature. Your sister pays promptly, she wrote. Daniel called soon after. Bring the tape, the transfers, the emails. We're filing first thing tomorrow. I looked at my reflection in glass. Bruised, limping, unmistakably alive. They'd scripted a ghost and got a witness instead. Tomorrow the judge would hear my sister. In my recorder's perfect memory. By dawn we were filing. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. An injunction to freeze the contract. Daniel stacked the evidence. Kara traced money transfers from my sister to Mark. Dates matched forged paperwork exactly. Then came the hospital logs. Edits to my file, midnight access. Credentials tied to my father's attorney. The notary stamp shook me. My signature flawless, too flawless. Kara found the notary in minutes. A golf buddy of Dad's. He admitted signing in absentia. They'd planned it like a business deal. My family tried to erase me. Dr. Price confirmed the worst. Records were staged to show incapacity. Her eyes were steady. My best friend delivered HR logs. Commit history. Every line of code under my name. Unchangeable. Unshakable. We entered court with boxes and crutches. The air smelled of varnish and nerves. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Curious eyes studying every bruise, every limp. The courtroom lights were harsh, casting long shadows across polished oak tables. Every cough, every shuffle echoed louder than it should, as though the building itself was waiting. Opposite me, pressed suits, polished smiles. Monica wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad's stare was rehearsed, Mother's lips tight. They looked like strangers in familiar skin. He tried one more script. Baby, let's settle as family. His voice was velvet stretched thin. Family forged my name, I answered. Each word a blade in the hush. The judge skimmed exhibits, her brows sharp. A hearing was set immediately. In the hallway, Mark broke. 2 questions, then collapse. I forged, he whispered. She paid me. Mom clutched pearls, trembling. Grace, think of our name. Our name forged mine, I shot back. That afternoon, Kara texted audio. Security mic near our staircase. An argument. A shove. A scream. Not perfect, but damning. Daniel built the chain cleanly. Contract signed. Jealousy. Stairs. Coma. Edits. Freeze. Forgery. The arc was undeniable. Settlement calls poured in by night. Money, terms, apologies. I turned each one down. Not for profit. For proof. We prepped the witness. The administrator who flagged edits. Her audit trail was ironclad. When Dad saw her later, he blanched. Oh my God, it's her. The sentence from the hook returned. Night fell over Denver. Street lamps glowed like watchful eyes. I packed meds, folded courage, rehearsed testimony. Tomorrow, everything would be sworn. I wasn't hoping anymore. I was proving. There is a difference. By morning, the courtroom would hear my sister, and my father's shadow, under oath. The courtroom smelled like paper and fear. I gripped the rail, steady. Daniel rose first, voice clean as glass. Your Honor, Exhibit A. The cafe recording filled the room. My sister's voice rang clear. It's mine now. Gasps scattered across the benches. Mom froze. Dad stared at floor tiles. Monica's jaw locked tight. Exhibit B, Daniel said calmly. Bank transfers flashed on the screen. Dates. Amounts. Mark's account. Exhibit C. Emails from HR and leadership. Replacing Grace effective immediately. Vision deck. Monica as lead. Each line struck like a gavel. Monica's lawyer objected, weak. Context, business necessity. The judge arched a brow. Exhibit D. Dr. Price took the stand. Entries were altered post-admission, she said. Sedation extended, deficits exaggerated. It doesn't match scans. By whom, the judge asked. External legal credentials, she answered. The requests align with filings. My father shifted, throat tight. Daniel saved him for later. Exhibit E. The notary entered, pale. I stamped without witnessing, he admitted. Tom asked as a favor. Dad flinched. Mom clutched his sleeve. Then Mark cracked. 3 questions, then collapse. I forged, he whispered. She paid me. Mom's pearls trembled. Grace, think of our name. Our name forged mine, I shot back. Daniel pressed further. Play the stairwell audio. A muffled argument. A shove. My scream. ER timestamps. Unstable. he asked softly. Or pushed? Silence thickened. The judge leaned forward. Anything else? Yes, Daniel said. To Mr. Harper, did you authorize? Dad faltered. Legal continuity. Continuity? Daniel replied. Replacing the author while she slept? A murmur rolled through the gallery. The judge tapped her pen once. Enough, I've heard enough. Her ruling cut clean. Contract restored, funds unfrozen. Referrals for prosecution. She turned to Monica. Fraud and conspiracy, guilty. To Mark, forgery, guilty. To my parents, civil liability. Air finally returned. Not triumph, oxygen. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. Kara exhaled. Dr. Price smiled with her eyes. Mom whispered, Grace. But stopped. Dad stared small at his hands. Monica's stare promised storms that wouldn't come. Reporters surged as bailiffs cleared aisles. Headlines formed before we reached the steps. Algorithm author wins case. Family scheme exposed in Denver. Outside, winter sun felt honest. I stood on the marble and didn't sway. Not a miracle. Just math, proof higher than lies. But verdicts don't end stories. Wounds still wait outside the courthouse. The gavel fell. Silence didn't. Outside, winter air stung clean. I breathed anyway. Not victory, oxygen. Funds unfroze. The contract returned with my name. Reporters waited. I didn't. I walked past microphones and questions. Proof had already spoken. I owed the world nothing more. At home, I sat with the ache. Verdicts fix paper. They don't stitch skin. I wrote 3 lists. What I keep. What I return. What I release. I keep authorship. I keep boundaries. I keep the woman who stood up. I return the narrative they wrote. The unstable, the unfit, the lucky. None of those fit anymore. I release permission-seeking. I release the house of tilted scales. I release the door that never opened. Dad texted paragraphs of dust. Mom left a voicemail of old weather. I saved neither. Forgiveness? Not a pardon. A perimeter. I met with the healthcare team. No balloons. Just whiteboards and clean coffee. Updates for the algorithm. Safer triage. Clearer ethics. Work didn't heal me. It reminded me who I am. That was enough. I signed a grant the next morning. Legal aid for victims of family fraud. Therapy vouchers. Emergency housing. Receipts for people with no witness. At the launch, I spoke plainly. No one should fight alone. The room didn't clap. It stood. Some nights, the stairwell returns. So does the hospital light. I let them pass through. Like weather I can name. My sister wrote from county lockup. No apologies, Angles. I didn't answer. Silence isn't revenge. It's architecture. I bought new crutches and kept them. A reminder. I walked in anyway. Pain is not a prophecy. It's a condition. Temporary, informative, survived. I'm Grace Harper. I wrote this line. And every line after. If you're standing where I stood, erased, rewritten, pronounced incapable, hear me clearly. You are not their version of you. You are the witness. You are the author. You decide the ending. Have you ever had to choose distance? Over the people who should have protected you? Tell me in the comments. If you've been through this, you're not alone. Before saying goodbye, if this story touched your heart, please give it a like. And share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories. That reminds us we are stronger than we think.
It wasn't supposed to be 3 years. At first. It was just until Dad's back healed. Just until Mom could pick up a few more housekeeping shifts. Just until things settled. And I could finally take that offer in Denver. Or maybe even move in with Danielle like we joked about over cold Thai takeout in my car. But weeks turned into months. And months into years. And somehow, I was still in the same twin bed I'd grown up in working full-time. Paying rent that wasn't mine. And tiptoeing past Kendra's bedroom like a guest in my own home. Kendra was always focused on her future. That's what everyone said when she stayed out late or skipped helping with groceries. She has potential. And I guess I didn't. I was dependable. The one who could make things work. The one who wouldn't fall apart if asked for more. So I said yes. Again and again. I covered the rent when Mom's hours got cut. When Dad had to skip shifts after physical therapy. I paid the heating bill through that brutal winter when the landlord threatened to shut things off. I canceled a job interview to stay home with Dad after his second fall. I took on a second project at the firm just to keep up with credit card payments. I said no to vacations, skipped birthdays, and stopped looking at studio listings entirely. But lately, The silence in the house felt heavier. Not angry, just resigned. Like everyone had accepted that this was my role, that I was meant to support. And the part of me that used to dream about a home of my own had started whispering again. The day the landlord announced he'd be selling the duplex, I didn't panic like Mom did. I didn't flinch like Dad or cry like Kendra. I just stood in the kitchen and said, "Maybe it's time we bought something." They blinked at me, stunned. "I can figure it out." I added, "It's time." Kendra actually hugged me. Mom clapped her hands. Dad looked like he might cry. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself believe I was doing something that might finally feel like mine. A week later, I found the listing, 3 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, a porch swing already installed. The paperwork took weeks. Endless signatures, documents, inspections, and calls during my lunch breaks. I drained nearly everything I'd saved, $10,000, gone in a single wire transfer for the down payment. I took on a fixed mortgage, tied to my name, my income, my risk. But when the realtor handed me the keys and said, "Congratulations, it's yours," I felt a quiet kind of pride I hadn't felt in years. Moving day was chaotic in the way that feels like something good is happening. Dad borrowed a friend's pickup. Mom carried boxes of kitchenware like she was 20 years younger. Even Kendra chipped in, unpacking her posters and curling iron like she was moving into a dorm. I didn't say anything. I just watched them fill the rooms, watched light pour into spaces we didn't have before. I took the smallest bedroom, no closet. Barely fit a full bed, but it overlooked the backyard, and for once, I thought this is enough. A week later, during a break at work, I opened Facebook. There it was. A photo of Kendra standing in front of the house, grinning with her hand on the railing. The caption read, "Thank you, Mom and Dad." For giving me my first house, I stared, reread. My coffee went cold in my hand. I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring. Cheerful. "Hey, what's up that post?" I said, trying to steady my voice. "The house." "Oh, yeah." She laughed lightly. "Cute. Right, Kendra. What do you mean your first house?" There was a pause. Then, well, Mom and Dad put the deed in my name. It just made more sense. Legally. I sat down hard on the bench outside the office. My ears buzzed. I swallowed. Why, I don't know. Taxes or something. They said it was better this way. Don't be weird about it. My name was on the loan. My name was on every payment stub. But suddenly, I didn't even own what I had bled myself dry to give. I ended the call and stared at the house photo again, her smile stretching wide under the caption that erased me completely. That night, I pulled out the manila folder of closing documents and turned to the last page searching for the name that should have been mine. I walked through the front door that evening and didn't bother setting my bag down. Dad was watching TV. Mom was folding laundry. Kendra was nowhere in sight. "We need to talk," I said. Standing in the living room, they looked up, confused, like I'd interrupted something trivial. I held the phone out toward them, the Facebook post still open. "Why is the house in Kendra's name?" Mom blinked. Dad rubbed his forehead. Neither answered right away. "It's not what you think," Mom said finally. "Then explain it." We talked about it. Dad added, "She's younger. It's about security. Her future. You're already on your feet." I laughed just once. Sharp. "My feet. I've been paying your rent for 3 years. That's why," Mom said softly. "You've always stepped up. You're stable. Kendra, she needs help. She's still finding her way. And I'm what? The scaffolding Marin," Dad warned. Voice low. "Don't make this a fight. You bought this house for the family." "No," I said. "I bought it. I signed. I paid. And you handed it to her." They didn't deny it. That hurt more than any excuse they could have given. I walked out of the room before they could say anything else, heart pounding. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went to the filing cabinet where we kept all the house paperwork, insurance documents, closing disclosures, tax records. The drawer stuck for a second, then gave way. I thumbed through the folders until I saw one labeled Legal, Deed. Inside, I found copies, not mine, not originals, not the set I'd kept. These were notarized forms signed 3 weeks before our closing date transferring future ownership to Kendra, marked as a family gift. And there, at the bottom, the signature of my own lawyer, initials I had trusted, letters I'd paid for. I sat back against the wall, documents in my lap, pulse in my throat. They didn't just erase me, they planned it. Smiled through dinners, helped unpack my boxes, thanked me, all while signing me away. The next morning, I called a different attorney and scheduled a meeting. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay still, staring at the ceiling in the too small bedroom of the house I apparently didn't own. Every word from the conversation echoed louder in the silence. Her future. You're stable. It's not what you think. It was exactly what I thought. By morning, 100 tiny memories had unraveled in my mind, stitching together a picture I had never wanted to look at. I remembered Aunt Jess's toast at Kendra's graduation. Some girls are just born to shine. I remembered Uncle Lou pulling me aside when I got my first job and saying, "It's good you're practical. You'll always land on your feet." And I remembered that Thanksgiving when I paid for the groceries and heard Grandma whisper, "Of course she did. That's what Marin does." They had all seen me as support. Not someone to be celebrated, but someone to depend on. Even my ex, Tyler, once said during one of our quieter arguments, "You never choose yourself." Marin, I don't even think you know how... I had laughed it off back then. He didn't mean it cruelly. Just tired. 2 months later, he packed his bags without drama. I let him go without asking him to stay. I used to think being selfless was noble, that if I kept giving, eventually someone would give back, but all it had done was teach everyone that I could be leaned on without limit. Kendra got special treatment because she was seen as delicate. I got burden after burden because they believed I could handle it when Dad was out of work. No one asked Kendra to pick up an extra shift at the bookstore when Mom had her surgery. I was the one who rearranged my work schedule, not Kendra. And now, when the most permanent thing I'd ever done for them was complete, they didn't even hesitate to pass it on to her. I thought about the documents again, about my lawyer's signature. Had he known? Had he been told some half-truth about a family agreement and signed off without realizing what it cost me? Or had they all decided I'd be too polite, too obedient to ever fight it? I looked at the clock. My meeting with the new attorney was in 2 hours. I grabbed the folder of documents and stood up. It was time to stop holding what was never meant to be mine. The attorney's office was quiet, almost too warm. I sat across from a woman named Elise Ung Sharpsuit, sharper eyes. She took her time reading the documents I laid out between us, flipping pages with calm, methodical fingers. When she finally looked up, I already knew what she was going to say. "You signed the mortgage," she said. "You're financially responsible. But the deed, that's in your sister's name." I nodded once. Unless you can prove fraud or coercion, there's little legal ground to reclaim the house. I bit the inside of my cheek. Even if I paid for everything, she can argue it was a gift. And if your parents helped orchestrate the title transfer, and they're not contesting it. "I know," I whispered. She leaned back, thoughtful. "But if it was a gift, Kendra may have a tax obligation, especially if the value exceeds federal thresholds." That caught my attention. How would I check she'd be required to file a gift tax return within the year? If she didn't, there could be penalties. And if she received other financial benefits, student loan deferrals, government aid, those might be affected too. Technically, she owns property now. I left her office with a tight knot in my stomach and something else humming underneath it. Not hope, not yet, but something close to focus. Back home. I opened my laptop and started digging. I pulled up Kendra's school records. I remembered the student loan paperwork Mom once asked me to help fill out the FAFSA. Kendra had used our parents as co-signers. She had over $20,000 in federal loans, currently in deferment for economic hardship. I checked her work history next. That took longer. Her resume had been in the family computer, according to it. She worked part-time for a design agency, but a few quick searches revealed the agency didn't list her as staff. No LinkedIn post, no formal bio. I called a contact I knew who worked in the same building. She's freelance. He said, off the books. Company avoids paperwork that way. Perfect. Next, I checked property tax records. The county hadn't received a gift declaration. No filings under her name for the current year. They'd forgotten the system they were trying to manipulate. Forgot that the same rules they bent could bend them back. I made a list. IRS tip line, Department of Education, State Tax Board, and an anonymous submission portal for underreported income. I wasn't burning their house down. I was letting the system walk through the door they left open. And I hadn't even knocked yet. It started with a voicemail. Kendra's voice, tight with panic, echoed through my phone, Marin. Hey, can you call me back? I got something from the IRS. I don't understand it. Something about a gift tax. Just call me. Okay, I didn't. A few days later, Mom called. Then Dad. Then both. Together. They left message after message, some pleading, some frustrated, all circling the same request. Help your sister. Be the bigger person. This wasn't supposed to happen. They never said. We're sorry. They never said. We were wrong. I sat at my desk, letting each call roll to voicemail, sipping tea and watching the light stretch across my living room wall. My living room, my name on the lease, my keys on the counter, my peace unbothered. I didn't owe them anything anymore, not even a response. 2 weeks later, Kendra showed up in person. I heard the knock before I saw her through the peephole mascara smudged, hair pulled into a tight bun, clutching a manila envelope like it might save her. I opened the door halfway. I didn't know. She blurted. About the taxes. They say I owe over $8,000. I don't have it. Marin. I didn't speak. She looked down, swallowing. And the loans they pulled my deferment, said I'm no longer eligible, and then the agency let me go. They're being audited. Still, I didn't speak. Please. I know you're mad, but I didn't mean for this. I thought the house was for all of us. Mom and Dad said it made sense this way. I didn't know it would turn into this. I met her eyes. But you posted it. You claimed it. You made it yours in front of everyone. I didn't think. She whispered. That's the problem, I said. And shut the door. It was 3 more days before Mom called again. She's your sister, she said. She's in over her head. She always is. I replied, and I always pulled her out. And now I paused. Now she's old enough to swim. I hung up before she could answer. The next morning, a new letter arrived, this one addressed to Kendra but delivered to my mailbox. Another agency. Another fine. I slipped it into a manila envelope, sealed it, and left it on the front porch. That night, I slept without grinding my teeth. For the first time in years, the house was gone by early spring. Bank repossession, unpaid taxes, loan defaults. The official notice went up on the door in late March. I never drove by. I didn't need to. I'd already stopped seeing it as mine long before the government did. Kendra moved into a shared apartment near the city, 1-bedroom split between 2 roommates and a part-time retail job she didn't talk about. She stopped calling after that. I think some part of her still believed I'd step in. I never did. My parents went back to renting. A small duplex farther from the center. The kind with yellowed blinds and baseboard heaters that click in the winter. They didn't tell me they moved. I found out through a change of address notification forwarded by the bank. By May. I put an offer on a 1-bedroom condo. It was small, 2nd floor, with a creaky balcony and outdated tile. But it had sunlight in the morning and quiet in the evening. It was enough. I paid for it myself. Every cent. No one cried at closing. No one posed on the porch for Facebook. Just me, the agent, and the notary, signing what I had earned with nobody's permission. A week after I moved in, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address. But the handwriting was familiar. Kendra. 5 pages. Apologies. Explanations. Maybe regrets. She said she didn't understand what it had meant to me, that she never meant to take anything away, that she wished she could undo it. I read it once, then folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. There are some things you don't reply to, not because you hate the person who sent them, but because you finally stopped needing them to see you clearly. I met someone last fall. His name is Mateo. He's kind, calm. When I told him what happened with my family, he didn't offer advice. He just listened and said, "That must have hurt." He knows how to ask before assuming. He knows how to stay quiet when silence is the answer. I make enough now, more than enough, and for the first time in years, every dollar I earn is mine. Every room I walk into is mine. Every breath I take in the morning isn't a borrowed one, and when I unlock my front door each night, I walk into something I built not for anyone else, not as a gift, but as proof that I was never asking too much. 6 months have passed. The condo still smells faintly like cedar from the shelf I stained myself. I keep fresh flowers on the kitchen table, even when no one's coming over. On Saturdays, I bake muffins I don't always eat. On Sundays, I sleep in without guilt. Mateo comes by often. He brings coffee and asks how my day was, not because he needs anything from me, but because he really wants to know. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Sometimes we just sit on the balcony with the radio playing and nothing to prove. My phone rings less now. Mom calls every few weeks. I let it go to voicemail. Her messages sound softer, like she's finally figured out that silence doesn't mean war. It means I'm not available to play the same role anymore. She hasn't said sorry, not exactly. But I think she knows. Kendra hasn't reached out since the letter. I kept it, still in the same drawer. I don't read it anymore. I've made new traditions. Tuesday dinners with coworkers who don't expect anything from me. A hiking group I joined, where no one knows my family name. Laughter that isn't strained. Questions that don't come with judgment. At work, I was promoted. My manager said it wasn't just the designs I delivered. It was how I handled pressure, how I led with steadiness. I smiled and said thank you, thinking how long it took to stop confusing quiet strength with being everyone's anchor. One night, Mateo asked if I ever missed them, my family. I didn't lie, sometimes. I said, but not the version they gave me. I missed the version I hoped they'd be. He didn't press, just held my hand. Tonight, I sat on the floor of my living room, sorting through old receipts and papers. I found a photo of the first house, the one I bought, the one they gave away. Kendra stood in the doorway, smiling too wide. I flipped it over and wrote in the corner, "Not mine." Then I put it in a box labeled "No longer needed." I turned off the lights, stood by the window, and whispered to myself, they were never my home. I was building someone else's shelter with my hands, and now, finally, I've built one of my own with walls that don't ask me to disappear inside them. The text came in at exactly 1:04 a.m. The screen lit up against the dark of my apartment, its glow casting strange shadows across the ceiling. I blinked into the light, assuming it was a system alert or some midnight spam. But no, it was from my mother. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. Lena has taken the lead on planning this year. She's invited a few of her colleagues, and, well, she feels it's best if you don't come. We hope you understand." I sat up slowly, read it again, then again, waiting for the words to rearrange into something less absurd, something sane. Another ping. "Lena thinks your presence might create tension. She wants it to be a sophisticated evening, and she's put a lot of work into this. Please don't take it personally." I stared at the screen until my thumb finally moved. I typed one word, "Noted," and hit send. That was all I gave them. No questions, no anger, no reminders. Not even a reminder of the 6 Trum Tom Moi Nhin Jola I had wired to their mortgage company 6 months earlier, draining the brokerage account I'd built over 15 years, or the rental property I'd sold to make it happen. Not a word about the nights I skipped meals to hit savings goals, the years of secondhand furniture and 80-hour weeks. Not even a whisper about the papers they'd signed so desperate. They hadn't even read the fine print. They hadn't just uninvited me from Thanksgiving. They had confirmed what I hadn't wanted to admit when I paid off their debts, that love in our family had a hierarchy. And I was somewhere below optics and convenience. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I placed my phone on the nightstand and turned off the lamp, and in the stillness of that early morning, I realized something else. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done. I closed my eyes and slept better than I had in weeks. By morning, I had already called my lawyer. It started with student loans and frozen dinners. My first tech job paid just enough to cover rent and ramen, but I kept my head down and worked, while others in the office chased promotions with designer bags and networking brunches. I taught myself back-end frameworks on weekends. I skipped vacations, wore the same 3 thrifted coats every winter. I never complained. By 26, I had my emergency fund. By 30, I'd saved enough to buy a small rental duplex an hour outside Seattle, nothing glamorous. Just solid, quiet, like me. Meanwhile, Lena floated from one passion project to the next. She quit law school halfway through, claimed she wanted to start a wellness brand, and racked up tens of thousands on our parents' credit cards for investor meetings in Napa and Miami. When she came home, she brought back nothing but scented candles and vague stories about potential partnerships. Every time, our parents cleaned up after her, or rather, they called me. "Can you help cover this month's minimum? She says she just needs a little more time. Lena's trying so hard, she just needs support." I sent what I could, sometimes more. I watched their mortgage payments lapse while Lena leased a new SUV with custom rims. I watched my mother cry about property taxes, while Lena posted poolside brunches on Instagram. Still, I said nothing, because I loved them. Because I thought being useful was the same as being valued. I told myself the house would stabilize them, that paying it off would stop the bleeding. I sold the duplex, took the tax hit, and transferred every last dollar I had, 6 trum tom moi yin jo la, to their lender. They called me a blessing. They promised to pay me back. They said Lena finally understood the damage she'd caused. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But 6 months later, the only thing I received was a text disinviting me from dinner. And that's when I remembered the one thing they had forgotten. I hadn't just given them money. I had made them sign a contract. I still remember the look on their faces the day I handed them the papers. Mom's eyes were swollen from crying. Dad kept rubbing the back of his neck like it hurt to admit how bad things had gotten. Lena wasn't there. She was in Tulum, supposedly networking. They hadn't even told her how close the house was to foreclosure. Or maybe they had. Maybe she just didn't care. They had called me their last hope. I told them I would help, but not without conditions. For once, I wasn't going to throw a financial lifeline with no boundaries attached. My lawyer, Marcy, had drawn up a clean, binding agreement. They would have 6 months to either repay the loan in full or begin monthly rent at market rate. If neither happened, the house would be formally transferred to me, and I could do what I wanted with it. They signed without reading past the first page. "You've always been the reliable one," Mom said, clutching my hand like I was a miracle. "I don't know what we'd do without you." They didn't know that this time. I wasn't doing it for them. Not really. I was doing it to survive being part of this family without losing myself in the wreckage. Now, sitting at my kitchen table in the morning light, I opened my laptop and clicked into the folder labeled Alden, Legal. Inside was everything signed PDFs, payment confirmations, notarized forms, copies of the wire transfer, a paper trail for every promise, every cent. It wasn't spite. It was structure, my version of protection, and they had forgotten all of it. They'd been so used to my silence that they mistook it for surrender, but I hadn't forgotten. And the contract had a date on it. That date was tomorrow. I didn't want to make a scene. That was never the point. The moment I confirmed the contract date, Everything fell into place. There was no speech to prepare, no confrontation to script, just a series of quiet, deliberate actions, each one an undoing of the version of me they thought I'd always be. I opened a new tab, typed in my airline rewards login, and booked a one-way, first-class ticket to the Maldives, window seat, departure. Thanksgiving morning. Then I texted Marcy, "Go ahead, serve the notice during dinner. They'll be home." She didn't ask why. She'd seen the files, heard the tone in my voice when I first came to her 6 months ago. I didn't want their house. I didn't want payback. What I wanted, what I'd always wanted, was a family that didn't make me earn my place at the table by bleeding for it. They hadn't left me out of Thanksgiving. They had freed me from one more year of pretending to belong. I closed my laptop and walked to the bedroom. In the closet. My suitcase still had the tag from my last work trip. I packed it slowly: swimsuits, linen dresses, 2 books I'd been meaning to read, and the folded copy of the contract. Not to wave around, but to remind myself I didn't imagine this. I didn't overreact. I gave them the chance to do right by me, and they chose not to. I wasn't going on vacation. I was choosing not to carry what wasn't mine anymore. As I zipped the bag, I heard a ding, another message from Mom. "We hope you're not too upset. Sweetheart, Lena's just under pressure, and this dinner means a lot. We'll celebrate with you another time." I didn't reply. By the time they'd be passing appetizers, the notice would be in their hands. Thanksgiving arrived with the precision of a well-rehearsed performance. Lena had hired a caterer. There were crystal wine glasses on rented tables. She'd posted a boomerang on her story that morning, candied pecans tumbling into a bowl, captioned, "Elevated holiday energy." What she didn't post was the moment a courier arrived at the door with a flat manila envelope bearing our family's last name. I didn't see it in person. Of course. I was at SeaTac, sipping an oat milk latte in the first-class lounge, watching rain trace soft lines across the windows. The first message came from Dad. "What is this legal notice? Call us immediately." Then, Mom, Emma, "You can't do this. This is our home." And Lena, "Predictably last, you're insane. You're ruining everything." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The contract was clear: 6 months from the date of transfer. They would either repay the full amount or begin paying rent. If not, the property would revert to me, and legal proceedings would begin. The papers they'd just received were the first step in that process, a formal reminder of the terms they'd signed, with the eviction clause highlighted in bold. From what Evelyn told me later, Lena's boss and his wife were already seated at the table when the envelope was opened. He saw the panic, the shouting, Mom crying in the kitchen, Dad making threats about lawyers he couldn't afford, Lena trying, and failing, to explain why the house might not be theirs for much longer. I imagined her face, the scramble behind the smile, the illusion cracking in real time. I looked down at my boarding pass. Gate B3, Maldives, via Doha, as the attendant called first-class boarding. I drained the last of my drink, slipped on my coat, and walked toward something quiet. Not revenge, just relief. The call came 2 days into my trip, just as the sun began to slip behind the turquoise edge of the horizon. I answered without checking the screen. "Sweetheart," Grandma Evelyn said, her voice warm and just a little amused. "You should see what you've done." I leaned back into the cushions of the villa's patio and closed my eyes. "It's a mess, I assume." "Oh, it's magnificent," she chuckled. Lena's perfect dinner collapsed in under 20 minutes. Your father shouted himself hoarse. Your mother was sobbing into a dish towel. The boss's wife asked if this was a bad time and excused herself halfway through dessert. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. She lost the promotion. Grandma continued. Apparently, her boss doesn't appreciate being lied to, or hosting dinner in a house that doesn't legally belong to her family. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. Just a clean, sharp sense of correction, of truth finally being louder than the performance. "And your father," she added, voice softening. He found the statements. The ones showing Lena's been taking out cash advances in their names for months. He's furious. First time I've ever seen him like this. That landed harder than anything else. Dad had always been silent when it came to Lena. Disappointed. Maybe. But never truly angry. Never willing to look her choices in the face. Until now. They want to talk. Evelyn said. All of them. Even Lena. I think they're ready to listen. I let the silence settle between us for a beat, the waves lapping softly nearby. I'll come home, I said. Tell them to meet me at my place the day after I land. Grandma hummed in approval. I've waited 15 years for someone to stand up to Hurricane Lena. Thank you for being the one. I smiled as the line went quiet. This time, I wouldn't be returning as their backup plan. I arrived in Seattle just after dawn. The city still quiet. Streets slick with rain. By the time I reached my apartment, they were already waiting. My mother stood when I opened the door. Eyes tired, hands clenched in front of her like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to reach for me. Dad looked older, smaller, and Lena barefaced. Hair pulled back. Not a designer label in sight sat on the edge of the couch like someone bracing for impact. I didn't offer hugs. I didn't offer tea. I sat across from them, opened my laptop, and clicked into the presentation I'd prepared on the plane. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to offer a path forward. 3 slides, 3 options. Option 1, sell the house. Liquidate non-essential assets Lena's car, the Aspen timeshare. Designer items and use the proceeds for a down payment on a modest home. Option 2, Dad launches the accounting firm he's always talked about. I fund it as a documented loan, with structured repayments and quarterly reviews. Option 3, Lena checks into a financial therapy program. No phones, no spending, no external funding for 1 month. I moved through each option slowly, clearly. No guilt, no apology. This isn't punishment, I said. This is structure. A future with accountability. No one spoke right away. Mom's eyes brimmed. Dad stared at the floor. Lena didn't move. Then she finally asked, "Why are you doing this?" After everything I've done, I looked at her, not the polished version. Not the storm she threw at everyone else, but the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Because you're my sister," I said. "And because I believe the part of you that wants to change is still in there." She nodded once. Barely. And for the first time. No one interrupted me when I clicked to the next slide. Lena broke first. Not with shouting or blame, but with something quieter. Her voice cracked as she said, "I don't want to be this person anymore." Her eyes stayed fixed on the rug, shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear into the floor. I waited. Mom turned to me next. "We didn't know what to do," she said. "We were scared. Every time we tried to talk to her, she'd explode, and we let it go on because we were afraid of losing her." Dad cleared his throat. "We thought we were protecting the family by keeping the peace, but we weren't. We were enabling her, and failing you." I didn't respond right away. There were 100 things I could have said, a decade's worth of silence I could have broken wide open. But instead, I opened the folder on the table, the original contract. "I'm not rescinding this," I said. "You signed it because you needed help, and I honored that. What you do next is your choice. But this time, I won't be cleaning up without boundaries." Dad nodded slowly. "We understand." Mom reached out, fingers trembling as they touched the edge of the paper. "Can we still fix this?" "You can start," I said. "Fixing is your job now, not mine." Lena lifted her eyes. "I'll do the treatment," she whispered. "If you'll help me get in." "I'll go. I will," I said. "But not because I owe it to you. Because I want the version of you who meant it when she said she wanted to change to have a chance." She blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek. It didn't fix anything, but it cracked something open. Dad nodded. "We'll follow the terms." It was the first time they'd said that without flinching, and I believed them just enough to let the moment be real. We met again the following week, this time at a notary's office downtown. No kitchen table, no trembling hands and vague promises. Just documents, dates, and signatures. I'd rewritten the terms with Marcy's help. Clear expectations, timelines, consequences. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Trust, after all, had a cost, and this time, it came with paperwork. Lena signed first. Her hand shook slightly, but she didn't hesitate. She was checked into the financial therapy center by that evening. No phone, no credit cards, no curated reality, just truth. Budgets, group sessions, and the mirror she'd avoided for years. Dad signed next, in exchange for my startup loan. He'd mapped out a plan to finally open the accounting firm he'd always talked about but never dared begin. He already had a small client list, thanks to a few people I'd referred from my own circles. He looked both terrified and alive. Mom didn't speak much, but she showed me a list of designer pieces she'd already sold, antiques she'd agreed to part with. A full spreadsheet, categorized by value and buyer. It wasn't just money. It was her saying, "I'm in this too." Grandma Evelyn stood beside me through it all. When it was time for a witness signature, she stepped forward without being asked. "About time someone ran this family like a business," she muttered, pen pressed to paper. There were no hugs afterward, no dramatic apologies or swelling music, but no one walked out, no one tore up the paper, and no one asked for anything different. As we left the office, I carried the signed copies in my bag not like a weapon, but like armor I should have had years ago. For the first time, everything that mattered between us wasn't buried under guilt or obligation. It was spelled out, clearly, and they chose it anyway. The snow started just after sunset. Not heavy, just enough to coat the rooftops and blur the edges of the streetlights outside my window. I stood there for a long time, watching it gather in soft layers across the city. Everything felt quieter in the snow, even memory. My phone buzzed behind me on the kitchen counter. I didn't rush to check it. I didn't flinch. It was Evelyn. "You didn't destroy anything, you reset the story." I read the message twice, then once more, just to feel it settle, for so long. I thought my only options were silence or explosion, that I had to either swallow the dysfunction or burn everything down to prove I mattered, but I hadn't chosen either. I'd written terms, held a line, walked away without slamming the door, and somehow, they'd walked toward me. I turned back to the window. A faint outline of my reflection stared back. Older than before, a little sharper around the eyes, but steady, present. Lena had been at the treatment center for 10 days. She'd sent me a letter handwritten, shaky in places, honest in a way I hadn't expected. She hadn't asked for forgiveness. She'd asked for space to keep trying. It was the most adult thing she'd ever written. Dad emailed me a rough draft of his business website that morning. No flash, just basic services, contact form, pricing. He'd even asked for feedback. And Mom. She'd forwarded me a receipt from Goodwill. 8 bags of clothes, 4 pieces of furniture, 1 designer handbag she said she didn't even remember buying. They were trying. And for the first time, I wasn't bleeding to make it happen. I closed the curtains. The snow kept falling. In my living room, a single folder sat on the shelf next to my record player. Inside it, the original contract, the new agreement, and a copy of Lena's intake form from the clinic. Not to hold over them, just to remind myself what I'd done, what I'd claimed, this time. The piece was mine, because I hadn't broken to get it. I'd built it, brick by brick, line by line, boundary by boundary.